Hey guys, what's up? Stock Retail coming back to you on a Saturday. Pretty excited to have some time to talk to you. And frankly, we've got some exciting news. So you might have seen yesterday there was a Bloomberg article talking about AMC's debt, talking about senior debtors or sort of the loaning agents, the banks, having like a meeting about us. So we're going to talk through what is news there, what is FUD, and why might that be exciting. So I'm going to share some thoughts and reactions to that, pick apart the FUD, but also kind of see between the lines on some good things possibly as well. That kind of led me to thinking more about today because I saw some people yesterday, I saw some people today. In some cases, there's some folks ripping off work that I've done. And I don't mind, right? You've heard the saying, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So, all right, I'll just take the compliment. People like the work I've done and they want to represent it as their own. That's fine. But among that too, I'm seeing some, let's say, like wolves in sheep's clothing kind of a thing. Some people positioning to manipulate you. And I always like to point that out so that you can be prepared, you can see ahead of time. And when it happens, you can, you basically won't be led astray. You can't be manipulated. So we're going to talk a little bit about manipulators. We're going to talk about the debt. Let's just jump in. So it was interesting. I think this was this week. Things kind of blur sometimes for me because there's just so much going on. In fact, yeah, it's right there in my own screenshot. 3 days ago. Geez, it feels like a month ago to me now. We saw news that there was this M1 finance that was getting charged by FINRA. Now, granted, a lot of us would like to see more like criminal charges on stuff like this, no more fines. But they had hired 1,700 social media manipulators. This is one brokerage that, frankly, I hadn't really known much about even. So it's not like there's some huge broker, right? 1,700 social media manipulators. Hang on to that thought because we're going to talk through, in AMC, right? Many of us believe this is one of the sort of biggest risks to the market, sort of a systemic risk. There's a reason we've been in a multi-year sort of pitched battle here on this thing, and we know that there are billionaires and even banks who stand to lose a lot to us, and even the balance of power shift in sort of the financial industry. Well, those are people who don't like to lose and will go to any lengths to manipulate you. We've talked about that before here, or if you follow me on Twitter. And so if one little broker is hiring 1,700 manipulators to lead you and influence you and sway you and confuse you and frustrate you, then just think about how many are you surrounded by in AMC. I want you to really kind of be thinking about that. And here's the thing too, you might even say like, well, why does this even matter if we're going to MOAS anyways? Like some people are kind of like, whatever, the DD's done, this is happening, I don't care anymore, I'm just going to write it out. And honestly, if that's what you need to do emotionally for yourself, I can actually respect that. If you're kind of like, I got to pull back and I'm just going to do me because we're going to win anyway. I actually get that, I do. But here's why this matters to me. So first of all, before I even say kind of what's coming, think about like along the way how people have before MOAS tried to sort of like manipulate you to get you to a place where you don't have any money left. You're not in AMC because you burned all your money. You were pumped into Mullen. I showed people privately. I wish I'd gone a little more public. I do have the receipts on this though. Someday maybe I'll show this after the fact. When we all kind of debrief what we went through for these few years. I was showing people they were paying bills with dilution. I knew that this was just kind of not going to work real well. With Bed Bath and Beyond, you can find me on Twitter. The moment that RC got into that, I looked at the finances and I said, no way, they don't even have a month's worth of cash. This thing's going bankrupt. Well, sure enough, it did. You were pumped into GTII by Lou. You were pumped into, Vinco Ventures by a lot of people who even claim to be AMC apes. And I could make a laundry list of, 20 more tickers that we've seen along the way. You keep being brought into these things to effectively become exit liquidity for other people and bag holders. And by the way, if that's happened to you, I hope you don't take insult. Like, it's happened to me before. I've jumped into plays and chased plays before. You're not alone. I've done it myself. But I hope we learn the lesson, right? So we say, okay, fool me once, shame on you. But fool me twice and 3 and 4 and 6 and 7 and 8 times. Okay, now I'm not learning a lesson. So that's, first off, to even get to the MOAS finish line, you need to start seeing where you're being manipulated. Because part of that is stealing your AMC position in a way if you run out of cash. But here's the real big thing that I think, and I was talking to my wife about this just this morning over coffee. I'm here on the West Coast. I'm filming this on my Saturday afternoon. This morning, our time, we were kind of chatting over coffee, and I was trying to process my thoughts for this video a little bit. And I said one of the reasons this is so important to me and why I'm fighting so hard, even though we're kind of, I believe, close to winning. Um, what happens after MOAS, guys? Let's say envision a time where we win, everything goes how we had, dreamed it could go. It's like a dream scenario, and I can't promise that, right? So I'm calling it a dream scenario. But let's just say it's MOAS, it's the highest squeeze ever. There's this dream scenario. We've got all this money. Guess who doesn't like losing money and is going to want to find a way to take it back, right? So now, what if I'm a bad guy and I get influencers? We just said this tiny brokerage hired 1,700 influencers. You don't think Citadel could hire more? You don't think Bank of America could hire more? JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, UBS? Let's, name anybody in London. There's a whole lot of fraud and manipulation there. Let's talk even about Canada and a lot of things I'm seeing there. Let's assume that there are manipulators among you. And even if they've started to see the writing on the wall that they can't stop this train from leaving the station, perhaps, they can't stop MOAS, it's happening, well, then you know what the next move is, right? You position yourself, if you're a bad guy, to get the money back after the fact. And you do that by getting people to listen to your voices who will read your scripts so that you can move them into bad plays after this. So this is why I want you to stay with me on this video. I want you to watch this. I want you to really critically think about what you've been seeing these past few years, the voices you've been hearing. How many times, if you followed me on this channel for a while, you've heard me say, look for integrity and look for credibility, not incredibility, credibility. If people don't have both integrity and credibility, I cannot stress enough, I do not think you should listen to those people. On finances, at least. You want to be buddies, you want to joke around, go grab a beer, whatever. But if someone doesn't have integrity and credibility, you should not be listening to them in finances. And so you need to be looking back at track records of people, including me, by the way. And you need to be holding people up to a standard of, have they been telling the truth and have they been right? Those are two different things, and they both matter. So after MOAS, I want you to prepare yourself that a day is coming when people are going to try to get your money back from you again. And like I said, I can't promise MOAS is happening, but I am saying I believe in it, but I can't promise it. All right. The other thing that's been going on to you these past few years, right, is how many times have you been given dates? And then you might take a position, let's say you chase some YOLO options or something, and then those are just gone, right? Like if you're not holding shares and you buy options and the date passes, and I am speaking from experience, this happens to me. There's been a few times where I thought, okay, it's definitely happening by such and such a date. And I took positions, that money's just gone, right? So you've got to be really, really careful that pre-MOAS and post-MOAS, people are trying to take their money, what they view as their money, back from you. So let's just talk about what the manipulator does, okay? And we're going to start to even just peel back these layers of this onion on how social media manipulators work. I'm even going to give you some sources that lay it out for you, and you can go read up on this. One of the keys is their job is to drown out truth seekers. I have watched this myself. If you've seen me, let's say even over, I don't know, maybe the past year or so, if you had been following me for a long time, I've been here since 2021. If you'd been following me, you would have noticed me shift a little to be a little more feisty, a little more pushing back on some things, calling some things out, getting a tiny bit more cryptic. And some people are like, kind of, what's going on with you? Well, part of that is I've been exposed more and more to seeing how many frauds and fakes and manipulators there are. And so that's caused me to get a little more and more, I don't know, just sort of ready to push back on those people. But the other thing I've seen is how many, let's say, alternative accounts to my own voice there are. People want to stand up other voices to drown me out. And I say me, but, I'm not the only good voice in AMC, right? There's plenty. And I see often that there are basically, just think about counterfeits, right? So if you've got a truth speaker, if you're the opposition and you don't want truth really being understood, you stand up counterfeits. You don't always just attack the person. Sometimes you stand up another voice that you try to draw people to and drown out the truth speakers. So let's just kind of look at a track record of speaking truth of maybe that integrity and credibility versus what people were saying to that. And you're going to start to recognize some voices. So in 2021, I was already talking about the tokens and cohorts. You guys have seen like this Brett Harrison video. So I was talking about FTX and Binance back then too. I'm going to point you to some receipts here. If you followed me a while, you already know about that. Some of you I know are new, so we'll kind of point that out. So I'm not just saying, trust me, bro. Already clear back in 2021, kind of as early as even the summer there, I was talking about these tokens and FTX and Binance and all the things you're now seeing. I think that Brett Harrison video on Twitter has like 8 or 9 million views now. Well, I was telling you about that in 2021. Okay. And I was telling you back then that AA would refinance. Well, what were they kind of saying to that? So I was being called some names I'm not going to say here, and this one here. I'm actually giving you probably the nicest one I was called. People were telling me Cohodes was the savior, and they were questioning me and how could I be. By the way, if you wonder why I'm saying Cohodes, Mark Cohodes was a famous short seller who came in pushing STOs, securitized token offerings. He wanted us to tokenize AMC, and that's when I was already telling you guys, hey, here's the history of tokens, FTX, Binance, CM Equity, Bittrex, all of that. You can go find all that. And so I knew that this was their way out. They were trying to cheat us all the way back in 2021. And here we are still playing this out. And when I was saying that stuff, I was attacked very hard. You saw Matt Kors say that Sam was our savior. People were calling me crazy as well. The people who didn't attack me outright were just saying tokens aren't even a thing. This is not real. Ignore this. This is anybody talking about tokens is crazy. So they painted us as crazy, right? And then as talking about how AA would refinance, I was told, the debt's going to crush you. You're crazy. That you're never going to be able to refinance and all that. All right, so let's move on. What next? 2022 here at the bottom. You can go find a video of mine in September, I think, of 2022, where I was already telling you about Q2 and Q3 that we had last year in 2023. So I was telling you a year before the results were ever published that profits were coming. I told you all the way back then, so that's almost 2 years ago now, that our financial structure, that the team had managed making that better than pre-COVID. You heard in the last earnings call, Adam and team saying our financial structure is better than pre-COVID. Well, I was telling you that in the fall of 2022. I was giving you, and it's actually my pinned tweet, the entire market, what's going to happen with the entire market and how that ties to AMC. By the way, I'm going to kind of jump. We're not going to talk about me this whole video. Give me like 3-4 more minutes, and then we're going to jump into the tactics of manipulators. The reason I need you to see the things that I've been doing is now you can also recognize who the imitators are and who the sort of false prophets are and who's being stood up to drown out voices like mine. So what were people saying back then? Well, you had some pretty famous accounts saying AMC will never be profitable, you all need to get out, and all of that. Well, then in early 2023, and by the way, on the AMC will never be profitable, well, you know our Q2 and Q3 results. I nailed it. I literally said those would be the quarters we'd be profitable, and then we were. Had we not had the strike blip from then on, I probably called some other things that now just got delayed a little bit by that. But we're going to talk about that too. In early 2023, I was already talking to you about how the cash flows were flipping positive. I was talking to you more about tokens and tying that to Ape and what Ape was doing, the crypto relationship. And I was also helping everybody see like, hey guys, don't listen to all these voices that are telling you the next earnings call, we're getting these dividends, because I was spelling out to you why the debt covenants were holding us back from those dividends and it wasn't time yet. Well, what was I told then? On the cash flows, I had people in my DMs and publicly saying you're an idiot, you can't even read a balance sheet, which by the way, cash flows are from the income statement anyway, so that was kind of funny. People were telling me I couldn't read a balance sheet. If you are new to my channel, by the way, I have 2 masters in business. I can read a balance sheet, I promise you, and I've been getting it right. There were voices, and I want you to really, really think about which voices. Some of them are still here and pretending they're the good guys. They were going on and on and on about AMC burning cash, and I was publicly talking to them about, what are you talking about? AMC's cash flow positive. People were still saying tokens are not a thing. Somebody even called me a hoe in a tokens conversation. You get to the name calling again. And again, I had been talking about how we would refinance, and they're still saying the debt will crush you. In the fall of 2023, I started already telling you this last fall about the strike blip, about how that was going to impact our profits. And you had all these voices saying like, "Oh, we're just up and to the right forever and ever. Stocks only go up," kind of a thing. And I was like, "Guys, you need to understand this the strike blip. Everything we're living now, I told you about last fall. I told you that in late 24 and 25, profits are coming. You heard the team on the earnings call say that as well, and the IMAX CEO as well. So it was even ahead of some of the good guys and saying this is coming, guys. I was explaining how the SEC and the CFTC and the DOJ were resolving. Now I want to draw, like, maybe if you're watching, you'll see my arrow here. I had been telling you in 2021 about the tokens, about FTX, about Binance. And then in the fall of 23, I was telling you, oh, this is the response. This is why FTX and Binance are in trouble, why Sam is going to jail, right? That's like 2 years apart. And so, but it's all connected, as you can see. So what was happening then? People were saying, well, I have the decodes and you're too stupid to see what's going on. And like AA is going to retire and different mergers and whatever. People were telling you to chase other tickers, other commodities. People were throughout 2023 in particular telling you that AA isn't who you think he is. People were saying we need to elect a new board and elect a new CEO, which, by the way, you don't elect a CEO, the board does. So guys, I want you to really again think. Some of these are voices that I see a lot of you thinking are on your team. And they're telling you we should replace Adam. They're telling you chase other tickers. They're telling you about dividends and only up and all these things that didn't make sense. And telling me that I didn't believe in the apes, right? Publicly attacking me and saying somehow that I don't believe in you guys when here I am fighting for you. Then, end of 23, I started spelling out a little more clearly, like what was going to be happening with Bitcoin, what was happening with the tokens, how that's related to AMC. I started warning you just the concept of buy low, sell high, right? Now, think about a manipulator wants you to be a bag holder. They want you to buy high and sell low because they want you to be their exit liquidity, and then they want you to turn around and sell to them at a discount so they can get back in and make money again. So if buy low, sell high, but people were pushing the Mag 7, the SPY, things like that on you. And that's what I was starting to warn you about. And I told you again, AA would refinance. And I showed you the path of where all the debt was. So, all right, what was I being told then? People have, and then at the beginning of this year, you can find me on Twitter saying, this is the year for Bitcoin and AMC. I'm not proven right yet on AMC. I get that. But I'm hanging on. I mean, it's only March. I got 9 more months to be right on this. People were saying Bitcoin is terrible, giving you all the reasons that it's horrible. People are even pushing the US dollar. And I'm like, do you not know the history of fiat currency? There was this whole crew who kind of came out saying, buy the AMC bonds. We're going to talk a little bit about that. All the push of different commodities and other tickers again. One thing you've seen consistently as well is this like Gary is terrible, Gary is evil thing. I am not going to be a Gary apologist, okay? Like, he comes from big banks. He comes from the very people that we're fighting. People kind of call him Goldman Gary. I understand all of that. But at the very least, we need to be objective and to say, okay, pull the thread on these 3 years. I told you about tokens and FTX and Binance. He went after tokens and FTX and Binance, which is now part of the story on Ethereum as well, by the way. We're going to talk about that. And I was telling you that refinance was coming. That's the news we're going to hit here in a minute. And again, people were saying the debt will crush you. And now, this month, like what's going on right now. So I've been trying to help you see that Ethereum, what's going on there and why Gary's after them. Let's think about track record. FTX, Binance, now Ethereum. I have told you many times about wrapped assets. That is related to what's going on with Ethereum. But here's what's interesting. This is why I'm partly talking to you now, too. There is a pivot going on. All the people these few years who kept saying everything I said was stupid, and I'm just using myself as a lightning rod. There are others who were with me. But all the people who were speaking truth for these 3 years, now I'm seeing the people who attacked us and the people who kind of low-key said we were idiots and you shouldn't listen to us and instead buy the bonds and buy these other commodities and all these other things. Go look. They're now echoing me. They're saying the tokens are real, where they used to say no way. They're saying Bitcoin, where they used to say no. They're literally using my words, talking about the strike blip, talking about how profits are coming, and they're now talking about how Adam's going to refinance. All the things that the truth tellers have been telling you while they've been telling you, don't listen to us, listen to them. Now they're flipping. Wonder why they'd be doing that. I wonder if they're positioning themselves so that you listen to them going into and out of MOAS at some point. So let's talk about the news for a minute. It's too soon to know? Okay, so I'm going to speculate here for a minute. It is too soon to know, but I'm wondering if it's happening. So one of the things I said, in fact, I'll skip the animation. One of the things I said in a video, it's actually in one of my playlists. I made two different playlists because I think it's important that you understand some information that I don't want to redo the videos on. So I've got one playlist that's all about kind of AMC's fundamentals. This video is in that playlist. Then I've got one playlist that's kind of all about all this crypto tokens, what I call the great unwinding. And you can go through and understand that. And also in all of that, understand who was out there telling you and who is only now kind of positioning themselves and pretending that they told you. A year ago, so you can see this is March of last year, almost exactly a year to the day, I spelled out this, I called it the pieces. And what I was showing you, among other things, was that Adam was going to be in a position where he had access to cash at a time when the banks were desperately going to need cash. Now, you just heard that last night, basically the banks, the people who own our debt, met and wanted to discuss what's next. Now, that article was positioned as a FUD piece, in my opinion. It was very negative in the ways that it talked about AMC and all of that. But what if these guys know that at any day, Adam could pull the trigger? And I want you to think about everything going on with Bitcoin. I want you to think about everything going on with this discussion on tokens and Ethereum. I have a feeling there's a chance these guys know that they're about to need a lot of cash, and that if Adam suddenly says, I've worked with some other partner outside of you and I've bumped my 2026 debt out to, I'm going to make this up, 2030 or whatever, I don't know, or like 2031, these guys would be in a world of hurt. And so I have a feeling this is actually them scrambling and that it's us winning, which is not FUD at all, right? That's exciting. That would be awesome. And that would be something I told you was coming a year ago. So as you now see voices saying all of this, and something else I wanted to go back on. Somewhere in here I thought I said, basically I was also talking about how we didn't have convertible debt. So I'm going to talk about that because that keeps popping up. And I was basically told, not basically, I was literally intimidated. No, someone tried to intimidate me. It didn't work. I was told to be quiet. I was told you don't know what you're talking about. And interestingly, this was in like 2022. Brand new accounts showed up who now you think are like the big, huge accounts that you should follow. They showed up in June of 2021, actually. And they were spreading FUD about convertible bonds and all this stuff. And what are you seeing the last couple of days? People spreading FUD about convertible bonds. So it's like the more things change, the more things stay the same. People showed up. They weren't in the ride with you from the start. They tried to take the microphone from the truth tellers and start to tell you all kinds of weird things. But the point is, there's a chance. I don't know for sure. I cannot tell you. Only Adam and maybe Sean know when we're refinancing. But there's a chance that's what the discussion is about. Either way, that article, I'm ignoring it. It was kind of written as a FUD piece. Let's talk about manipulation. So most of the rest of this video now, we're going to talk about it. And I really, really want you to see the ways that this happens. And I'm going to tell you in some ways some of the things I've been through. And so there's different faces of the manipulator. Now remember that one broker hiring 1,700 people. Now add Citadel and UBS and kind of formerly Credit Suisse, and add Bank of America and JPM and Goldman Sachs and just you name it. Names from Canada that you can think of, names from London that you can think of, names in Germany. Think about how many times Deutsche Bank has kind of committed fraud and gotten in trouble. You're dealing with really, really big players. And if you don't think they can put fakes among you, I want you to pause and really think about that. Okay? So here's some things you would see. You'd see the disruptor. Ever been in a space call that's really kind of making ground and talking about some real interesting information, and somebody just shows up and kind of sucks the air out of the room? You'll see the so-called expert, but you'll notice they're kind of leading you into just distractions and other topics. You'll see the pot stirrer or the rage generator. Ever see anybody who's just like kind of always angry and screaming, like can't ever talk about anything positive whatsoever? You're going to see the good cop, bad cop, right? Like, have you ever noticed people kind of going in pairs and they'll definitely do scripted arguments with each other? By the way, you can just go search this stuff. It's literally documented. There are people who've kind of been whistleblowers who've said, here's how we have actually, in point of fact, manipulated sentiment. So yeah, good cop, bad cop is definitely a thing. If you'll notice, people kind of setting up fake arguments, and then you know the good cop is effectively then infiltrates and is seen as part of your group. There's the unrealistic hyper, right? Like, and we're going to talk about some hard examples on all these things. But people who are like, here's this movie you've never heard of, and it's going to do $100 million on day one. It's like, hold up, I don't think that's right. Or the stock's going to go to $200 tomorrow. And those are there also to kind of to discredit us, to make us look silly, and also to manipulate your emotions. There's the clown, like the person who just looks kind of ridiculous and stupid, and again, sort of makes us look terrible. There's the person who kind of is constantly presenting the shiny ball. So I talked about how many other things you've been pumped into, all the distractions you've been given. Here, look over here, kind of squirrel. There's the detractor. Like, no matter what good news there is, they're going to be the yeah, but. And here's why that's not so great. Like, I know there was one, it was like, we're selling out of popcorn buckets. And that's the person who's going to say, well, then Adam was dumb for not making more. It's like, can we just celebrate that we had sellouts? This is money, and this is profits, and this is high margins. There's the info gatherer. Ever notice someone who's just asking all kinds of questions and sort of constantly trying to get either personal information or DD out of you and just milk you? I have dealt with all of these people and more. So here's some things I want you to ask if you've ever seen. And note the link at the bottom. It's not really a link because you're watching a video, but you can just type this out. There is an article that's kind of interesting on this and how people infiltrate and move whole discussions and whole groups. So here's one that they do. Avoid discussing key issues. Instead, focus on side issues. You ever noticed, like, we start talking about something important and suddenly there's all these other random topics to talk about? There's a reason there's spin every weekend, too. Create rumor mongers. This is, the fake decoders fall right in here. Rumors, constantly rumors, over and over, all these different rumors. And now you've got to like spin and figure out what's real. And oh my God, is that true? And let's do DD and we got to talk. Just breathe and calm down. Silence critics. I cannot tell you how many times people have tried to silence me because I notice something wrong. Well, just shut people up. Gather everybody around and make it look. You get sock puppets, you get bots, you get just a whole network of people who kind of drown out or attack someone. And, they hope that someone like me is sort of too wimpy to deal with it. Play dumb. Like, I cannot tell you, I've seen people try to argue with shorts online, for example. And if you're ever like a friend of mine or close to me, you would know, often I'll say it's really pointless because they're not actually interested in what I'd call a good faith debate. They're not interested in a logical back and forth. You're never going to hear like, oh, that's a good point you have. All you're going to see is just never acknowledging facts, never acknowledging truth and reality. You've seen the Jim Cramer video, maybe even. He literally says, never speak truth. Just never acknowledge what's true. He was kind of talking about how to sort of manipulate a stock. And that is what you'll see. If you ever try to argue with a short online, it's going to go circles, just around and around and around and around. And no matter how many good facts you think you have, the point for them is just to play dumb and not acknowledge any of it. And sidetrack opponents, name calling, ridicule. That is the name of the game. You guys saw like Gasparino and Dougie Large and just how terrible their language is. I posted about that on Twitter. I'm sure many of you have seen that elsewhere as well. I cannot tell you how many times I've been called all kinds of names, and it's supposed to like draw this reaction out of you, make you angry, make you respond. It's kind of like it's like taunting, right? It's trash talking, and you don't have to respond to it. Vanish. How many influencers have you seen just disappear on us? Some of them that you thought were good. Just poof. Now, people have life. Things happen. I understand that. And if it's one or two, Makes sense. People had stuff come up in their life. But when it's 3 and 4 and 7 and 10 and a dozen and 20, and all of the people that were kind of your influencers in AMC, poof, they're gone. Just go all the way back to 2021 and think about who's still here. Not very many. And I posted about this on X/Twitter recently. Like, they've rotated out Squad 1 in like June of 2021, and they rotated in Squad 2. And then there's about mid 2022 where Squad 3 showed up. You can go look at like the timing of when people started talking about AMC. In many cases, you can even just look at creation dates of accounts. That's not always, doesn't always hold true. Like, I actually was in AMC since December of 2020, but you would see the creation date on my X account is like in February of 21. That's because I got rid of an old account and started a new one that would be, kind of a unifying voice. I didn't want to be political in any way and all that kind of stuff. But generally, you can still see there's a theme. You can kind of see waves of creation dates of when these guys are bringing in a new set of influencers. And they always network with each other, too. You can catch their networks. They'll use a straw man, right? So you've seen that one, like set up a fake argument and then knock it down. But it's like no one... Here's just a really silly example of it. I remember, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, maybe, Starbucks had these kind of more generic holiday cups. Like, they were red and I don't know, maybe they had snowflakes on them or something. But, they didn't say Merry Christmas or something like that. I am kind of more from a faith community. Some of you have probably sort of picked that up. Although, I hope that you sense that I'm respectful of sort of all beliefs, all paths. I'm glad you're here. I believe AMC is something we're all doing together, regardless of creed. And so I try to be kind of, thoughtful about that in the way that I present here. But I remember in my communities, everybody, like hundreds of people all over Facebook at the time and some other media were, basically saying, stop complaining about the Starbucks mugs, like chill out. But you want to know what? I didn't see a single person that I actually knew actually complaining about the Starbucks mugs, but it was this huge topic. So that's like a straw man. Like, it's something that's not even happening, but you act like you're this amazing sort of debater and arguer, set up something that's just easy to knock down. Change the subject. So we've seen that a ton. You'll see that in space calls. You'll see that on Twitter. You'll see that in Reddit. Like, there's a important topic and someone will just completely derail it into another subject. So you've seen all that. All right, so here's some kind of key themes, and you'll find all this in that article, that link I had on that last slide. And I have experienced these things. So one way to neutralize an activist, this article was kind of about activism, but that's what we are in AMC, right? Activism can just be, I'm pushing for a positive change. There's something that I see that I don't like, and I'm with some other people, and I'm pushing for change. That's what we've been doing. So you kind of neutralize and sidetrack them. You work on their message not getting out. You work on wasting their time. You get them frustrated and discouraged. You make sure nothing good is accomplished. And one way to neutralize, too, that I've mentioned is sort of drowning out voices. Like, look at how many accounts have popped up who in some ways maybe represent bits and pieces of some of the truth speakers. Like, for me, it might be financial acumen, right? And so then there's people who pop up who, one of the people who I said a couple slides ago, had popped up as like being someone who knew all about finances, and they were the ones saying like, oh, there's all this cash burn. And I was like, what the heck are you talking about? AMC's cash positive, which turned out to be true, right? I was right. But this was someone who stood themselves up for you guys. And a lot of apes on Twitter were like, oh, here's this new voice. And they're like, they really know what they're talking about on finances. Only if they know what they're talking about, how come they didn't get it right? And how come it just happened to be that what they were wrong about was really, really negative, right? And then they're kind of drawing people away from listening to the voices who are giving you the facts. So neutralize and sidetrack. Another one is sabotage. So have you ever seen, like this first one was interesting to me, write encyclopedic flyers. Well, have you seen people who write long things? And I guess I'm laughing because sometimes I'm pretty wordy and some of my older Reddits are pretty long. But I can think of a couple names who denied that tokens were a thing and who had just super long responses about everything. But it's like this saying, I think it's from Shakespeare or whatever, like sound and fury over nothing or something. I'm sure I got that right. Some of you literature buffs can help correct that. But basically a whole lot of nothing, like just hot air, super long, sounds super smart, but really in the end, either just discredit somebody or kind of say nothing and just at the end you've read this thing and you're like, I don't even remember what's going on. I guess I'll just go eat some chips or a cookie or have a snack. Well, that's the point, right? Like suddenly you're not focused on what was real. Have demonstrations. I'm looking at number 3 in places where no one cares. Do you remember a while back someone who flipped on Adam, who went completely negative on apes, who had been kind of a friend of mine, and hosted like a demonstration that I don't know 7 people joined or something, and it was and made us look kind of dumb. But interestingly, notice that like mainstream media highlighted them, right? So some of you probably remember what I'm talking about, and yet mainstream media picking up voices who make us look kind of stupid. And if you think that's by accident, well, I don't agree with you. So, solicit funding from rich people instead of grassroots support. Getting kind of big. Have you ever seen people kind of posting up celebrities for us? Like, hey, let's just follow this celebrity instead of the apes who know what's going on. Confusing issues, making wrong demands, endless discussions at the bottom that waste everyone's time. You've seen the space calls that just go for hours and hours and hours and end up kind of being about nothing. Look, if you're there to hang out, that's cool, but sometimes there's opportunities to get some stuff done, and it's like someone just rambled on and didn't get to the point ever. Provoke. You've definitely seen this. How many so-called apes are just attacking and nasty and all of that, or people who don't even pretend to be apes, but they're just out there causing problems all the time. Um, I had one that I started to even doubt some people close to me. Look at number 2. Suggest doing foolish, illegal things to get activists in trouble. Or number 3, encourage militancy. Look, there's a time and a place for standing up and being counted. I get that. And so I'm going to be careful here. But I remember people, I had the sense of like, was I being drawn into saying things that I would later regret that could be held against me, even in court or something? People talking about, I'd like to see people accidentally suicided, or we should, violently riot and stuff. And I knew at the time, like, either these are my friends just being really angry, and okay, I understand that sometimes, or these are people trying to get me to say things or to even do things so that I will be in trouble. And now you're starting to have some voices who are talking about violence and riots and whatever. And I want to be real careful here because I know some of you really believe, like, hey, there is a time to stand up against tyranny. And by the way, there is. There really is a time to stand up against tyranny. I've even posted a book, perhaps I'll post again, that's kind of, in some ways, kind of preceding the revolution thought in America. Like, when governments don't represent you anymore, there's a time to say, hey, this isn't cool. I get that. But by all means possible, I'm going to do this, let's say, on the up and up and with integrity. There's that word again. And with the courage to fight for what's good. And so I just want you to be really aware that there are going to be people who are going to try to get you riled up and to say really violent things in the hopes that they can perhaps kind of get you in trouble. Just be careful about that. Gathering info. You've probably had people, I know I have many, many times, and I still get it. People, and by the way, Shorty, if you think I can't see through you, people ask me questions that are just obviously kind of seeking me saying something and seeking me giving you information that, you would sure like to suck out of me. Or in some cases, even gathering personal information. I've kind of got some online stalkers, and I see you, and so I ignore you. But that's real. That happens. So watch out for the info gatherer as well. By the way, also on the getting you to say things you didn't want to say, price targets is another one. People have often gotten me, tried to trap me into saying financial advice, into giving price targets, all that kind of thing. That's why I'm always saying no dates, no prices. So all of that has happened to me over the years. Here's one really interesting you'd see in that article. Flood the internet with agents. And then, look at this. There's this idea of spending hour upon hour out there. Interesting to think about. Who in the world has the time to be in a space call for like 8 hours a day? I know I don't. I have 3 kids. I have a job. I have family, I have hobbies. There's a reason sometimes you guys come to me and you're like, man, why haven't you made a video in a while? Guys, I get really busy and I get really tired. I have a regular life. So it's just suck the air out of the room. Like, be the voice that just makes everything weird and boring and long and tiresome. Um, and by the way, too, let's acknowledge like not every voice out there is just some planted agent. Sometimes people are just clickbaiters. They see that AMC is a way to get follows and likes and hold space calls and hear their own voice talk. But just interesting to think about that hour upon hour concept. So let's go through some hard examples. So I'm going to give you kind of a warning flag, and I'm going to give you things I've seen over the years in AMC. So warning flag on the first one, script reading. You will see times where it's like, what the heck happened? How come like 20 different people and all of these big influencers are all talking about the same thing at the same time and sounding like someone sent them a script? Well, guess what? Someone sent them a script. Again, let's go back. One little broker hired 1,700 people. They were giving those 1,700 people scripts. They were giving them talking points. They were telling them what they wanted said. Do you really think that's not happening in AMC? I want you to, out of one side of your mouth, remember that you have said, this is like the biggest thing ever. This is MOAS. This is the shorts have like, gotten themselves stuck. This is huge. This is however many billions of dollars or whatever you want to say. And then say, well, even though it's that many billions of dollars on the line, nah, everybody around me is real. Nobody would fake. You hear that, right? So, scripts going out. We saw not long ago, I don't know, probably 6 months ago. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I couldn't remember at the beginning of this video that something was 3 days ago. There's just a lot that I've been dealing with these 3 years, guys. All of the big accounts, all of a sudden at once, talking about buying bonds. If you don't think the hairs on the back of my neck went up when that happened, well, I'm telling you they did. So, one of the things that happens too is I myself have to go back and forth and I think about this regularly, guys. I guess I'm letting you into a piece of my mind. So the info gatherers are going to use this and build more of a profile on me. That's fine, whatever. When do I fight publicly and when do I just kind of try to help educate you guys? And that way, at least I'm not fighting, I'm educating, and we just deal with it. When I saw all of the buy the bonds and there were new voices and new YouTubers and people who had frankly worked for places like Goldman Sachs, who were the ones telling you to buy the bonds, I was like, man, do I just call them out by name and fight publicly? And here's what happens too, and this is why it's so perfect for the manipulators. Here's what you do to a guy like me. You pump all this misinformation, perhaps even attack me publicly, get me to fight back, and now you paint me as, man, how come he's so negative and fighting and why can't he just get along, right? It's a great way to neutralize somebody. So you're going to find me sometimes fighting, sometimes not, and when I do, I hope that you see I've thought it through and I felt it was really important to speak up. I think I've only really maybe a couple of times called out some names. And so I hope you see that that was that important to me. And one of those being when I called out Tara and Cohodes. And I think you see in hindsight, I nailed it. I got that right. There's been a couple others. I ask you to think about those. If I do have integrity and credibility, then please think about it. So everybody said buy the bonds. The other one, and I want you to think about some of the voices. When Ape was being voted on to convert, and then when the conversion was actually happening, I saw this wave of voices saying, some people said preferred equity cannot be converted. Some people said Ape was not one for one. Many of those were actually the same people, and they were a network. I told you there's a network. How come all the same groups keep echoing each other? I really want you to ask that question. I won't give you the answer, but I want you to ask the question. Why are the same groups giving bad DD? Why are the same groups echoing each other? And I posted videos, saying like, yes, Ape will be converted. Yes, Ape is 1-to-1. And I gave you the sources of actually AMC's documents. Like it was literally posted on the SEC's website that you could just read and see. And so I was sourcing it and saying, don't trust me, I'll give you the source. Other people were saying, trust me, this is wrong. How come they were giving you bad DD? Why do you think that is? And why do you think I've turned my back on a lot of those folks and just said, I just can't with you, I'm out? I'll let you answer those questions for yourself. I guess I kind of just talked about fake and false DD, but there was more. So the convertible bonds I mentioned in 2021, when Squad 2 showed up, one of the first things they were doing is talking about these convertible bonds, which, by the way, you'll find me publicly saying they didn't exist. They weren't real. Literally, we had no convertible debt at that time. But this new crowd came, and who some of the biggest accounts you can think of now, and Tara brought them onto her, I'll call it show. Um, they're a network, guys. You bring up the voices you want amplified. If you go back and think about who was not ever kind of brought up and amplified. That'd be me and some other voices like mine. Meanwhile, brand new accounts suddenly were huge and they were there talking about convertible debt and how that was going to play out and people were going to gain control of AMC and all this stuff. And I was like raising my hand going, hey, no, not true. Happens. False DD. People telling you that AMC was going to make money on voodoo. Well, there's no relationship there. People telling you there was going to be a silver and gold dividend and when it was going to happen. I mean, it'd be cool if it happened, but that was pure speculation. But people were posting it as DD. People saying that a dividend was happening. When I was like, no, there's the covenants on the debt. You could just go through time after time after time, people giving you bad DD. If people give you bad information in life, wouldn't you kind of say, I'm not listening to you anymore? So why are you doing that on social media? People making wild predictions. So I saw before the last earnings, like someone posting, use Chat GPT to say that we were going to, I think they said like $3 a share or some insane amount. But we had a loss on the quarter, and that was a bummer, and I didn't like saying that out loud. It makes me sound like the negative one, right? But I gave you the facts, and I was correct. There's that credibility and integrity. But people were posting ridiculous stuff that wasn't going to be true. When Taylor came out, people were giving these wild predictions that were just easily shown to kind of not be real. And then when I kind of spoke truth to it, telling me that I was the negative person, right? Um, Over and over and over. And I've told you in other videos, if I was to want to manipulate you, guys, my undergraduate's in psychology, so I know some things about some of this. If I wanted to manipulate you, there's this saying like hope deferred makes the heart sick. All I got to do is set up false hope and then just keep dashing your hopes. Hey, we're going to be at $100 on Tuesday. And then you're like, ah, crap, it didn't happen. Hey, we're going to have a dividend this quarter. Ah, crap, it didn't happen. Hey, Taylor's going to be 3 billion. Shoot, it didn't happen. This movie is going to do 200 million, even though it's an indie movie that no one's heard of. And then I come and I post, man, this is terrible. We're missing expectations. We're not even hitting anything. Well, whose expectations? The fake person's expectations. All right, let's keep moving. Fake decodes. Come on, guys. By now, we're 3 years in. You got to spot the sneaky negatives, the little like, hey, Adam's quitting, sowing seeds of doubt. We're going to merge. We're going to be bought out. Pulte's here to buy us. I guess I just named a name again, but all that stuff. Adam's speaking directly to me. We've got this secret handshake. Stop it. Guys, come on. We've been here long enough. You need to start spotting if someone has not been getting it right. Look, I'm not saying there's no secret messages out there. We're dealing with really, really big stuff and really, really big players. And sometimes the only way to communicate is to very, very carefully get some messages out. There's a reason for like a bat signal or something. You got to call in the help sometimes. I understand that. But people saying, well, I've unlocked the magic key and he's talking directly to me, I'm just super, super, super cautious about that stuff. I play at my own decodes. I try to figure it out. So, and I'm just, I do that for fun. But I'm not going to come to you guys and say, I figured it out. He's talking directly to me. Here you go. Now trust me, bro. Only listen to me. Anything of just blindly listen to me is instant red flag. Constant disruption. That's the next one. So I already talked about that. I won't kind of belabor the topic, but there's good conversation happening and someone just shows up and kind of rambles and or causing drama. I had it with one of your favorite accounts on Twitter. I say that because I know many apes think this person's awesome. There was something they were saying that was incorrect publicly. I tried to handle my business, sort of thoughtfully. Went to them privately, said, "Hey, here's how this is wrong." This is, I don't know, maybe a year ago. Um, they said, kind of, forget it. Let's talk about this publicly in a space call. They wanted the drama. And right then and there, I knew, okay, you're not serious, because they wanted me to have a public fight with them and just have this big drama and all the clicks and all that stuff. And so we just kind of stopped. And I was like, forget it. I'm not doing that. They like chaos. They like drama. They don't want us in a calm state. Did you know that if you keep someone kind of their adrenaline running high, if you keep people agitated, if you keep people in this higher up state, you can cause them to crash. The human body, the human brain isn't meant to be sort of in constant stress. You can be in stress for a little while and then you crash. So that's what they want from you. They want drama and chaos and trying to figure things out and what's going on. That's why I've been a voice of kind of, hey, relax, we got this. And by the way, we're gonna get there too in this video. We're kind of nearing the end here. We're almost there. Hang with me, guys. Bring in bad players. So think about who brought you Cohodes, who brought you Pulte, who brought you the ambulance chasing lawyers, who brought you Chad's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 57.0, who had spaces where they're constantly giving shorts the microphone. I'm pausing on that because some of you think that some of these space call hosts are great when they were constantly giving voice to the shorts. I'll let you decide how to feel about that. Me, I think it means something. Ensure that you hate those who are fighting for you. I am sure I see messages out there about me, people trying to stir doubt about me. It's fine. Whatever. I say consistency over time. Your reputation fights for you. That's why I don't really defend myself, because you guys have watched me for 3 years if you've been on Twitter. I guess more like, I don't know, 2+ years or 2-ish years if you've been on YouTube on my channel. I think you can see who I am, and I will just let my own reputation speak for me, and I'll leave that one at that. Gary, yes, I'm saying Gary, and I said it earlier. I want you to really think through the scoreboard. FTX defrauding us, Sam goes to jail. Binance defrauding us, he's going to jail. Ethereum, wrapped assets, perhaps being used to naked short us. Now he's going after them. Again, I am not going to be an apologist for him. I will, to keep my own objectivity, I've got to say what's wrong with the SEC, and there's a lot. There's a lot wrong with the SEC. They're not defending retail in the way that they should. Okay, but I also want you to see who's fighting them. Dougie is fighting them, and Congress has been fighting them, and Hester from within has been fighting them. And this is what Gary's been dealing with. And so I look at that and I go, all right, I may not love you, but I see some things you're doing, and at least objectively I can acknowledge you dealt with FTX, you dealt with Binance. Now there's voices, so that's the distinction there. Can you objectively acknowledge what's actually happening? There are voices who are constantly just saying he's the devil himself, and won't acknowledge what happened with FTX, won't acknowledge what happened with Binance. And part of that is cutting his own legs out from under him. That's what I want you to really see, the sneaky thing. So-called apes even, day in, day out, constantly attacking him and being unwilling to acknowledge progress and some things that have happened. We're activists. I'm going to be an activist and say, not enough SEC, we need more. Right? That's going to be my voice. And I can still say thank you for X, Y, and Z. The people who can't, I want you to really think about sort of an enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of a concept. If Congress literally told Gary not to look at FTX, think about what would have happened if he hadn't looked at them. Congress actually tried to stop him. If people have sued him and tried to stop him from looking at Binance, if people are now trying to stop him from looking at Ethereum, and you've got apes who are siding with the people trying to stop that good work, please think about that for a minute. Now, how about the people trying to get you to hate AA? We had the mermape, I'm calling him. That there's another account, Jan Jack. There's been others who stood themselves up, infiltrated the community, looked like apes, then completely nonstop, all day, every day, anti-Adam. Marine's another one, right? Stood himself up as this total ape and then just flipped. And once they flip, constant negativity about Adam. They want you to hate the very people who are fighting for you. That's a great way to infiltrate a community. I want you to notice that there's consistent networks. Like Lou's handler became the handler for some people who came after me. And who were the people pushing all those false ape narratives? And who were the people hosting shorts in their space and stuff like that? There's a reason I walked away from some of these people. And I even want you to think about geographies. Like, how come if, Canada is... by the way, I am very close to some Canadians in this movement. And there are some really awesome Canadian apes. And gosh, I love you guys. You teach me, you encourage me, you guys are awesome. And so two things can be true. I can also acknowledge if Canada has like 1/10 of the population of the US, how come there's so many Canadian apes and many of them who are very negative about a lot of the things I just talked about? Kind of weird. Watch for the networks, watch for patterns. And then watch for these sympathy circles. Like there's so many nurses, there's so many, vets, there's so many sort of people of faith. Well, I'm sorry that I sound skeptical now. I did not come into this play in 2021 skeptical. I was wide open and I was pretty naive. And over the years, I have learned some things. It's going to be really easy to set up, you just set up archetypes and you draw people to you and you create all these little circles. Here's your punk rocker. All the punk rockers are drawn to them. Here's your faith-based person. All the faith-based people are drawn to them. Here's your military. What I'm really just saying is just because someone looks or sounds like you does not immediately mean they deserve your trust. These are the ways that people come after you, and we've seen all this in AMC. Okay, so speaking of credibility, I want to just point you so that I have receipts, so that I do not ask you to just trust me. And I want to point you because for two reasons. One, to see, okay, has this guy been telling me what's up for 3 years or not? Two, who are the false prophets and imitators who are now going to start saying they're the ones who told you this stuff? You'll see it. I'm already seeing it, so I don't even have to point them out because you're just going to see it. I told you about Safe Harbor for years. I want you to watch this Ethereum conversation, and I want you to understand Safe Harbor. I talked a little bit about it in my last video. I've had some tweets about it. We'll keep talking about it. That was related to tokens. That was related to the cleanup of tokens. That was related to crypto. There's a reason I'm now drawing that out to say, okay, I was showing you what was coming. I've talked about the great unwinding, same thing. I'm showing you where you can find these things too, by the way. I have a whole YouTube playlist on that. Now that people are starting to say, oh, Bitcoin. Well, okay, I was already telling you the path of maybe how we were going to squeeze. AMC fundamentals. First, people said I was an idiot and I was wrong. Then people said I didn't care about the squeeze. I was only talking about fundamentals. Now people are talking about AMC fundamentals. Discredit didn't work. Paint me as negative didn't work. Now they're just going to copy me and try to steal the microphone. That's fine, but at least you'll see it. You can see some things on Reddit in terms of digital assets and AMC, liquidity margin and MOAS. That's my pinned tweet. You will see me spelling out everything that's going to go down. I've yet to be proven right on all of it, but I've been proven right on enough of it that I want you to go look at that. So when it happens, you'll know who it was who was telling you and who was kind of not telling you, but now pretending they did. Tokens, profits, debt, cash. You could look up any of these terms from me on Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, FTX, Binance, Bitcoin, Wrapped, Wrapper, assets. Just go look at that and you'll see I've been telling you. So I understand being surrounded by all these fakes and being kind of confronted with the idea of it. It took me a long time, guys. There's this other idea of cognitive dissonance, like just not wanting to believe something. I'll tell you, I stayed in too many DM groups. I interacted with too many people who turned out to be false. I will tell all these stories when we're done. Who knows? Maybe I'll even write a book or something. I'm not sure. But boy, I've got a lot of stories, and a lot of them are a bummer. Like, I'm a really open person. I want to connect. I want to believe that everybody's here for something good and we're fighting together. But again, I also have come to understand that there are people who want to trip you up, and I want to protect you from that. But if all of that is feeling just like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming, let's just simplify it. We have the cash to survive and then thrive, not the thrive. We have the cash to survive, then thrive, right? We have added popcorn, candy, distribution, maybe beer and wine are coming. We have the strike blip getting further and further into the rear view. I do believe 2026 is going to be refinanced. Who knows? Maybe even soon. We're even more profitable now than pre-COVID. Apes are not leaving. The real apes. Forget the fakes. Real apes are not leaving. There's a reason almost 4 million people own this stock, right? And there's a lot of you that are just maybe not so loud, but I feel you. I see you. I know you're there. And you know what I always say, we will win. Usually that's the end, but I want to talk to you about why this matters if we're going to mow ass anyway. I want to bring that concept back. You know, Gladiator 2 is coming. If you've seen it, boy, there's this beautiful idea that what we do in life has echoes in eternity. I want you to know why I fight so hard. Russell Crowe actually just posted, and I'm almost even getting emotional because I have kids. And he posted, he took his kids, and it's kind of funny, right? He says, I took my kids to the old office. You can see where he is, right? You can kind of see part of the post at the bottom. Dad voice, are you not entertained? And I want to draw out that concept. Whether it's children or friends, or even for me, my children's children someday, I want to see a place where the market is transparent and fair, and where manipulators are shut down, and truth speakers and truth seekers are encouraged. And so I believe what we're doing now, those of us who will stand up, is going to have echoes because we're going to win. Let's go.